Subscribers only mode activated. We're on chapter 15. This is the last chapter of the book. There's that. And then it's the conclusion. We're going to go ahead and finish him out. I started reading this book 6 months ago, man. I got this book, The Stoic Challenge, A Philosopher's Guide on Becoming Tougher, Calmer, and More Resilient. Funny story, I got this book from the first day I went to go get on probation, right? I talked to my probation officer, and then I had to get a mental health, a drug assessment by another dude, and he has so many books in his office. And I just asked him, I'm like, man, can you give me advice on some good books to read? And we was just having a good conversation. I sat there and talked to him for like an hour after we was done, and he ended up giving me this book to have. And a couple days later, that's when I stopped smoking cigarettes, after I started reading this book. Fast forward 6 months later, what's today, the 6th, the 7th? My last day on probation is on the 8th, so it's just a full circle moment for me. I think I'm gonna go give it back to him, because he wanted me to come back, and he's probably gonna give me another book. But yeah, man, it's funny how life is be lifing, man. And then yesterday I was talking to I met this person, and this dude write books, and I got his number, so I'm gonna give him a call after I'm done on this live stream. And we also had a good conversation, and I just got to get into that the mindset of networking, and building relationships with people that's doing things like writing books and reading books, and doing the things that I want to do. I got to surround myself with those types of people. Narnia, what's up? How you been? But yeah, so I'm gonna give Cuz a call. But yeah, let's go ahead and finish up. Damn, I missed my spot. Hold on. Let's go ahead and finish up this book, y'all. Many people are bored by or even loathe their daily routine. This is unfortunate, since a life filled with loathed days will end up being a loathed life. By engaging in negative visualization and its variants, you can increase the chance that, instead of simply enduring the moments of your life, you savor them to the greatest extent possible, and thereby increase your chances of extracting every drop of delight that your life has to offer. You might find that instead of simply grinding through your allotted days, you embrace and even celebrate the life you find yourself living. Stoics would even go so far as to assert that you are lucky to be mortal. If you were immortal and knew it, you would be far more likely to take your days for granted. You squander today? No worry. Since the immortal you would always have tomorrow, acknowledge your mortality, though, and you will be acutely aware that every day you live represents a withdrawal from a life bank that has a finite number of days in it. In most circumstances, you don't know what that number is. It might be as low as 1, meaning that this is your last day alive, but it might also be 25,500, meaning that you have 70 more years to live. Since you have a finite number of days left to you, they are precious, and it would be foolish to waste them. You likely went through early childhood oblivious to your own mortality. Then, perhaps, in response to the death of a pet, neighbor, or relative, you found out that things die. Sometime after that, it dawned on you that you would also die, but your understanding of your mortality might be described as nebulous and theoretical. Yes, you would die, but it would be sometime in the distant future, likely decades and decades away. This assumption made it possible for you to shove thoughts of death back into the back of your mind, maybe into one of the closest conveniently located there. Closets, maybe into one of the closets conveniently located there. Some people never move beyond this level of understanding their mortality. They go to bed young and healthy, the way they have thousands of times before, only to die in their sleep. Most people, though, will at some point in their life be forced to confront their mortality. On a visit to their doctor, for example, they might be informed that they have advanced pancreatic cancer and have only a year of life remaining. Or on the field of battle, they might know without anyone saying a word that they have been shot, are losing copious amounts of blood, and have only a few more minutes to live. When, as a child, you become aware that animals and people die, your parents probably gave you a sugar-coated explanation of death. They might have told you that in dying, your dog Rover didn't cease to exist, but went to heaven, where he was quite happy. They said the same of the relatives and neighbors who died. This raised the possibility that you might, when you ultimately join them in heaven, be treated to the sight of your grandma holding Rover in her lap. Wouldn't that be grand? Many people never really move on from this childhood conception of death, and it is easy to understand why. Believing in heaven not only takes the sting out of death, but potentially makes death something to long for. In heaven, after all, you get to see all the people you loved who parted life ahead of you. You also get to get a do-over on life. And because heaven is eternal, you don't have to go through that second chance at life, fearing the death of your dog, your loved ones, and most significantly, yourself. What could be better? The prospect of life in heaven raises some important questions. There is scant evidence that we'll have a continued existence after our earthly demise. What's going on, y'all? Metal, what's going on? Cause Steve Curry, what's going on? Nate H, what's going on? Marvel Boy Wonder, what up? Hardcore Gabber, how's it going? Hey, we got 7 people in the building. It's been a while. Hey, hold on. You might end up spending it not in heaven, but in hell. Even if you are a devout Roman Catholic who has done everything that, according to your faith, is necessary to ascend to heaven. Indeed, even if you are the Pope himself, it might turn out that the Earth's 1.8 billion Muslims are right, so you have wasted your time. Conversely, if you are a devout Muslim who has done everything necessary to ascend to heaven, known by them as Jannah or paradise, the Earth's 1.2 billion Roman Catholics may turn out to be right, in which case, too bad for you. Suppose, for the sake of the argument, that you do end up in heaven. As we have seen, it isn't clear that you will live happily ever after there. Indeed, retain your earthly tendency to take whatever you have for granted, and you might, before very long, start taking your heavenly existence for granted. And a short time after that, you might start complaining about life in heaven. Sometimes when I tell people this, they respond by saying they are going to turn over a new leaf when they die and will be very satisfied with their heavenly existence. My question for them, if they have it in their power to become capable of satisfaction, why not use that power while still on earth, thereby making their earthly existence more heavenly than would otherwise be the case? Suppose you came to possess information about when and how you will die. What would you do with it? A Stoic would have no trouble answering this question. Since his primary goal in life is to attain and then maintain tranquility, he would then spend the time that remained experiencing as few negative emotions as he can, with as little anxiety, fear, anger, and regret as possible. He would do his best to embrace the sources of delight that his life still had to offer. In more general terms, he would regard his dying days as an opportunity to top a good life with a beautiful and fitting capstone. At the same time, a Stoic will realize that obstacles can arise that make it very difficult for him to have a good death. One such obstacle is extreme pain. A Stoic will require, hold on, a Stoic will be quite adept at preventing negative emotions and dealing with them if prevention efforts fail. Pain, however, is a sensation, not an emotion. And if it is sufficiently intense, it can undermine his reasoning ability, thereby depriving him of the tools the Stoic gods have given him for dealing with life's challenges. The onset of dementia late in life can likewise strip him of his reasoning ability, resulting in an unfortunate end to what was a very good life. The goal of remaining tranquil until we die seems eminently sensible, but how can we accomplish it? We can once again use the Stoic test strategy, only now the challenge we are dealing with will be the loss not of our cell phone, our job, or our freedom, but of our very life. We can think of it as our Stoic exit exam, the test that all the previous Stoic tests have been preparing us for. In chapter 7, we saw how, through the clever use of framing, we can make... It's raining. Sprinkling. Hold on. We can think of it as our Stoic exit exam, the test that all the previous Stoic tests have been preparing us for. In chapter 7, we saw how, though the clever use of framing, we can make everyday setbacks more tolerable. We can likewise employ framing to ease our passage from life. Like any Stoic test, our Stoic exit exam has two components. The first is to look for a workaround for the setback. If we have received a cancer diagnosis, we should probably get a second opinion and even look into experimental treatments. Likewise, if we have been wounded on the field of battle, we should try to slow the loss of blood in case help arrives. In doing these things, it is important that, to the extent possible, we stay calm and focused. Suppose, however, that our search for a workaround is unsuccessful. Our death, we conclude, is both imminent and unavoidable. We must then turn our attention to a different undertaking, having the best death possible. This is when our Stoic training can come into play. Consider again the last time meditation and that I discussed earlier in this chapter. When we finally do become aware of the likely time and circumstances of our death, we might find ourselves doing it as part of our daily routine. We will be poignantly aware that the conversations we are having, the meals we are eating, and the kisses we are sharing could be our last. They will therefore have special meaning. Paradoxically, it is possible that in dying, we will be more alive than we have ever been. The prospect of death will at last make us fully aware of how beautiful, how wonderful our life is. In order to have our best chance at a good death, we must keep in mind that the Stoic principle that we should not concern ourselves with the things we cannot control. Doing so is a waste of time under any circumstances, but doing so in our dying days is a waste of the precious little time we have remaining. Rather than fighting our imminent death, we need to embrace it. Many elderly people realize this instinctively and inform those around them that this is their time to go. Another central principle of Stoicism is that we should be socially useful. We should, that is, do what we can to help those around us have better lives. A Stoic will know that her dying presents a wonderful opportunity for her to encourage others to rethink their way of living. She can remind those around her that inasmuch as they have only one life to live, they are foolish to waste even a moment of it being miserable when they have it in their power to experience delight. And she can simultaneously demonstrate to them during her last few days of life what it means to have a good death. Let us end this discussion of death by considering three cases. In 1996, psychologist Amos Tversky learned that he was dying of metastatic melanoma. He carried on his normal routine, and most of those who encountered him were oblivious to his condition. He died not long afterward, at age 59. During a discussion of his impending death, he told a friend, "Life is a book. The fact that it was a short book doesn't mean it wasn't a good book. It was a very good book." Although Tversky died a natural death, he had obtained drugs that would allow him to spend his life quickly and painlessly if he chose to do so. The ancient Stoics would have understood this choice. They thought that that under some circumstances, suicide wasn't just morally acceptable, it was sensible. Seneca, for example, imagined God explaining to his thinking to us, "I have made nothing easier than dying. I placed life on a downward slope. If it is prolonged, only observe, and you will see how short, how easy the path that leads to freedom." Dying, then, is the easy part of your Stoic exit exam. The challenge is to retain your equanimity. I should add that as long as your continued existence can help others, Stoics would regard it as cowardly to commit suicide. Let me develop Tversky's "life is a book" metaphor a bit further. Living your life is like writing a novel that is a curious blend of fiction and non-fiction. Each day you must add another day's events to the manuscript. You have considerable creative freedom with respect to the thoughts, utterances, and actions of the novel's protagonist. We got 14 people in here. What's going on, y'all? Protagonist, actions. Hold on, protagonist. Yourself. He or she can do anything that you are capable of doing. The other aspects of the novel must be utterly realistic, though. It must be set in the present day actual world, and its characters must be existing people who respond to the protagonist's actions exactly as they would in real life. Writing a novel that meets these specifications would be challenging enough. But it turns out that there is a complicating factor. Your editor refuses to give you a deadline. She can download and publish your manuscript whenever she wants. Maybe she'll do it tomorrow, or maybe she'll wait several decades. The novel's deadline, in other words, will resemble your life's quite literal deadline. Your goal under such circumstances should be to make sure that no matter when your editor publishes your novel, it will stand as a complete work, or as complete as humanly possible. Yes, some story elements will remain unresolved, but no important business will be left undone. In particular, those who helped you will have been thanked for their help, and people who love will know of this love. There will be precious few things about the plot that you will want to change, if you had it in your power to do so. This in part because of the choices you made, but also, and more important, because you made it your business to embrace whatever life you found yourself living. Besides framing our death as a test, we can frame it as an adventure. Indeed, as the last and in many respects, the greatest adventure of our life. If we do this, instead of approaching death with dread, we can approach it with anticipation. I know this sounds strange, but the ancient Stoic philosopher Julius Canus apparently succeeded in just doing that. During his reign, the Roman Emperor Caligula condemned numerous people to death, often for frivolous reasons. Canus was among them. When the centurion came to lead them to his execution, he was playing a board game with another prisoner. He complained not about being taken away to die, but about being prevented from finishing the game. He told the centurion not to believe his opponent if he subsequently claimed to have won the game. Since Canus had been one piece ahead when his circumstances forced him to retire, this action likely involved a bit of posturing on his part. And yet, even 2 millennia later, It is an impressive bit of philosophical theater. 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 And how did Canute succeed in taking so much of the sting out of the imputing death? By treating it as an adventure. Just before his execution, someone asked him for his thoughts. He replied that he was preparing to observe the moment of death. Would his spirit be able to witness its departure from his body? Even though his death would be a fatal setback to his future, he found a way to extract value from it and thereby gave it a silver lining. The American poet Mary Oliver is winner of both the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. In her poem, When Death Comes, she expresses an outlook on death that resembles that of Canute's. She tells us that when death comes, like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, she doesn't want to realize now that it is too late to do anything about it, that she has simply been a visitor in this world. She doesn't want to end up sighing, frightened, or arguing. She wants instead to enter that cottage of darkness, full of curiosity, knowing that she spent her life playing the role of a bride married to amazement. Whether Oliver realizes it or not, hers is a stoic approach to living and dying. Of the ancient Roman Stoics, Seneca has played the biggest role in this book. He had many insights not only into setbacks, but also into death, the final setback. Allow me, then, to end this chapter by describing his death. The Stoics, as we have seen, had a tendency to get into trouble with the powers that be. Okay, I can't pronounce these names. But this person was banished. Canute was executed, and this person was exiled. Not once, but twice. Seneca also got into trouble. Emperor Claudius condemned him to death for allegedly committing adultery. The sentence was commuted to exile to the island of Corsica. When Seneca returned from exile, Nero was emperor, and Seneca became one of his principal advisors. Nero started behaving erratically, though, and subsequently condemned Seneca to death for allegedly conspiring against him. Seneca was given the choice of either killing himself or being killed by someone else. He chose the former option. Friends and family were allowed to be present during his final moments. When some of them wept, he responded by chastising them for abandoning their stoicism. Just when it would have been quite useful, he embraced his wife and cut the veins in his arms, but didn't die. Because of old age and infirmity, he was a slow bleeder, but then cut the arteries in his legs, but he still didn't die. He requested poison and drank it, but again, without the desired effect. Finally, he was carried into a steam bath where he parted from life. That's crazy. All this time, he remained true to his Stoic principles. If the Stoic gods were watching, they surely shed a tear on his behalf. They were themselves Stoics, after all, and as such, they would have greatly appreciated the magnificence. Am I saying that word? Magnificence. Yeah. Of Seneca's exit from life. Boom. Last chapter. We're done. Wonder if you can read a dictionary. Hey, that's funny because I thought about it. Like just going through and I got a dictionary in there upstairs. I got one. But like I used to fucking I used to daydream about just going through and reading the dictionary. That's funny you say that. Yeah. All right, so this is the conclusion. Another day at the airport. I began this book with an airport story, and I will end it with one. In early 2017, as the result of a long and improbable series of events connected with my research on Stoicism, the culture minister of France invited me to attend the opening of an exhibition of the Louvre. Not only was this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it had an element of adventure, and so I accepted the invitation. My wife and I flew to Atlanta, where we boarded an overnight flight for what was supposed to be a weekend in Paris. The next morning, in preparation for our arrival in France, I reached out. I reached for my passport, but it wasn't there. But it wasn't where I thought I had put it. I triple checked my pockets, my carry-on luggage, my seat, and the area around where I was sitting, but nothing turned up. A flight attendant who saw me rummaging asked whether anything was wrong. I explained the passport situation, and she said, "Don't worry, this happens all the time. It's here somewhere." She began a search, but had to terminate it because our plane was in its final descent. She said after the plane landed, we would do a thorough search. After the other passengers deplaned, the attendant began her search in earnest. She eventually partially disassembled my airplane seat, but to no avail. At this point, another flight attendant came back, found out what was going on, and said, "Don't worry, I'll find it." She had me empty my pockets again. She asked if I was wearing a security belt under my clothes. I already checked it. I said, "Let's look again," she replied, and I awkwardly pulled it out. No passport. By this time, 4 other attendants had joined our search. They were poking around and making suggestions when the plane's pilot came back to make some suggestions of his own. I was astonished and somewhat I can't say that. Disconfided to be the object of so much attention. It was finally decided that I should deplane without my passport and wait nearby. A ground crew, they explained, would do a very thorough cleaning of the plane, and if the passport was there, they would surely find it. They didn't. At this point, I recognized the handiwork of the Stoic gods. It was a test. Passports don't just vanish. My theory is that between leaving the top of the jetway in Atlanta, where I had been asked to show my passport, and arriving at my seat in the airplane, I dropped it, and whoever was behind me picked it up and pocketed it in order to sell it. Internet research indicates that passports fetch a good price on the black market. At this point, an airport official came to escort me to the airport police station where my passport problem would be sorted out. He said that he had contacted the U.S. Embassy, which is going to send someone to help me. When that person finally arrived at the police station, he informed me that I had picked a really bad time to lose my passport. The United States, under the direction of the recently elected President Donald Trump, had refused any entry to any number of foreign citizens, creating lots of extra work for the diplomatic services. As a result, there's a very good chance that the French would use my case as part of a payback gesture. He explained that the police were going to question me and that I would be provided with a translator, and that I should be not just polite, but very, very polite. The policeman who subsequently questioned me would have been intimidating, even if he hadn't been wearing a gun on his hip. Through the translator, I told him my story and explained that I had been invited by the French Minister of Culture to attend an event at the Louvre. I even showed him the engraved invitation, which I imagined was the key that would unlock the door to Paris. He glanced at it and scoffed that it was just a piece of paper. He then asked me to sign 7 different documents, all written in French. My French was pretty basic, so I asked her translator to translate them. She responded that it was just the usual paperwork and that I should sign. So sign I did. The theory that the willingness to sign documents was an internationally recognized gesture of politeness. The policeman took the documents away to consult with the higher up. About 10 minutes later, he came back with a scowl on his face. I expected the worst, but he announced that I had been granted permission to enter France, but had to get a replacement passport as quickly as possible. My guess is that because of the Louvre invitation that meant nothing, his boss figured that to kick me out of the country would be potentially more trouble than letting me in. So he did. My wife had not been allowed to come back with me during the questioning. I subsequently told her that what had been happening and had showed her copies of the documents I had signed. Her French is much better than mine, and on scamming them, she commented that I had been wise to choose deportation by plane rather than by ship. Should they have found it necessary to deport me, it was utterly unaware of having made this choice. I was utterly unaware of having made this choice. I had arrived in Paris on a Saturday, so I had to wait till Monday to apply for a temporary passport at the U.S. Embassy. On that day, my wife and I showed up there only to discover that it was closed for American celebrated President's Day. A setback within a setback, I thought. How ingenious. We returned the next morning and took our place in line. It was twice as long as usual, a consequence of the embassy having been closed for the day before. This might be described as a setback caused by a setback within a setback. The Stoic gods were clearly working overtime on this one. In this line were people who, like me, had passport problems. At that time, I was doing research for this book. It occurred to me that this was a wonderful opportunity to see how people handled setbacks. So while my wife held her place in line, I went around asking others how they came to be here. Everyone had a setback story to tell. Some had lost their passport or had it stolen, while others had stayed in France so long that their passport had expired. As I listened to people's stories, I tried to assess how well they were doing in the aftermath of their setback. As was to be expected, many were angry and full of blame, but others seemed to have rebounded nicely. I got my replacement passport, and that afternoon we boarded the airplane for the trip back home. The Stoic test appeared to have concluded, so I graded my performance. Because I had spent the episode in a test taker frame of mind, I had experienced little frustration and no anger. My emotional state can best be described as a mixture of fascination, what would the Stoic gods do next, and amusement at the test's various twists and turns. I responded to many of them with, "What else?" laughter. At that point, it dawned on me that because I had made it my practice to respond to setbacks by using the Stoic test strategy, I had transformed myself from a person who had regarded setbacks merely as an unfortunate aspect of life into someone who both studied and appreciated them. I had, in other words, become a setback connoisseur, and I concluded that the episode I had just experienced was a setback equivalent of the finest French champagne. I tipped my hat to the Stoic gods for their ingenuity in devising such a test. Having the pilot come back to talk to me was a nice touch, as was having the embassy closed on the day I needed it. I also thank the Stoic gods for the gift of the testing me in this manner. Not only was it an opportunity to show my Stoic stuff, but they had also handed me on a silver platter a setback story to tell, and a pretty good one too, don't you think? Oh, that was a good book. Hell yeah. All right, done with that one. Where the bookmark at? Boom. That was 100 and well, with the conclusion. With the conclusion, it was 178 pages. Took me 6 months to complete that small book. But hey, will you read more? What? All right, yeah. Took me 6 months to finish that book. You know what I mean? I completed one of the full book and then like a half of another one, which I'm not gonna finish that book because it's just a bunch of stories. So, yeah. But the next book we're gonna get started on, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. I touched on this just a little bit before I came out and finished that one. And this one is pretty good. It talks a lot about God, and it got a little bit of scripture in here. So I know it's a good book, and it got red. I don't know if you can see that, but it got like red, or burgundy font. So it's a pretty good book. I'm excited to read it. The Purpose Driven Life. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know if this can fit in here. Not really. Barely. Nope, not even barely. Alright, so I'm gonna have to find a spot for this book because it barely even fit with my little. It barely fit in my little book spot. But well, I guess it fit in the glove box. Yeah, I'll just keep it in here. In the glove box, in the glove compartment, where it belongs. Keep this one right here. And yeah, I gotta make a phone call, y'all. Huh. Yeah, I'm excited to read that book, Nate. But I don't remember where I got it from. I think I honestly don't remember where I got it, because I just be collecting books. Like if I see a book, especially like some free books, if I come across like somewhere in life where I just see some free books, I just grab them and keep them and just save them for later, which has really paid off for me. But yeah, it's raining now, so I'm gonna go ahead and make this phone call and then take care of some other business that I gotta take care of. Appreciate y'all for watching. Look forward to seeing more videos of reading. Let me know if did y'all like my little reading skills. Somebody said I had some good reading skills. Metal been around for a while. Appreciate that. Narnia be checking in. Narnia usually be in here, my little readings, my little book club readings. Hardcore Gabber, what's up? Nate H, also new. But yeah, Steve Curry. Yeah, I'll check back in later on, y'all. I gotta go. Thank you, Nate.